So Christiane is with me. She's been writing music and singing songs since she can remember. She's been living in Montana for 13 years with her family and continues to gravitate toward music as a way of self-expression. She is our next act lined up for Press Play, the monthly benefit concert we hold here at the Interlake office. Thanks for joining me, Christiane.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is exciting. So I've been listening to your music a little bit. You have such a lovely Joni Mitchell-like sound from what I've heard. What draws you to writing these kind of songs?
Well, it's funny that you say Joni Mitchell because I think a woman with a guitar singing, it's like everybody who wants to talk to me afterwards often compares me to someone that they know or that they associate with. And I'm always find that interesting to get that feedback because I would never think that I sound like Joni Mitchell. But I love that that's your experience with it. And yeah, like I said, being a woman with a guitar is a powerful thing. And so when someone asks me, people always want to know, what style of music do you play? Or who do you play or sound like? And I can never answer that question. And I've always been a person who doesn't like fitting in a box or being stuck in with a label or genre. And so I'm always like, it's like bluesy, folky, country, bluegrass. And the other day, even a venue had jazz under my thing. And I was like, jazz? And then I was playing my songs. I was like, oh, yeah, there is a little, jazz sprinkled in. So when I write my songs, it's really not so much of like what I'm trying to sound like, but more of what I'm trying to convey and the feeling. And so sometimes it's like I'm messing with my guitar and a beautiful chord progression comes through and I'm like, ooh, and what does that feel like? And what is that trying to say? And then putting lyrics to that. Or sometimes it's like something inspires me and then I'm like, I gotta make that into a song, and that's how can I fit that emotion in what style? Whether it's like blues, I need to get some blues out, or I want to make a real tender, finger pick, lighthearted song, or like major chords for something happy. Or so, yeah.
That's so cool. Who are some of your musical influences?
Well, besides the birds and the rivers and the wind, besides nature and just life itself, if you're wanting specifically singer-songwriters, I would say a few of my favorites are Patty Griffin. Something I love about her is she gives me a real visceral reaction, like chills or goosebumps, and she just has this sound that is so unique, and her songwriting is fantastic. And that's something that I hope for. When people tell me that they got chills or goosebumps or teary-eyed, I'm like, yes, that's the biggest compliment, and she does that for me. Another one is Gillian Welch, and she is just like a classic, like really the heart of like American life and the struggles and the beauty. She's fantastic. And then Greg Brown, actually. I was just listening to these people on the way, like, I'm going to get, the spirit infused in me. And Greg Brown was on, and I took a wrong turn, and a song right then came on by him called Wrong Turn. And so I don't know if you know him, he's a real giant guy with a deep voice, and he's so funny and charismatic, but he writes songs about everyday moments and turns it into everything. And one of my favorite songs by him is Poet Game. And there's a line about going out under the stars to take a leak. And he looks up at Orion and Pleiades, that must be Mars, all as clear as we long to be. And every time I'm out camping or at a cabin and I go to the bathroom in the woods, I am like, that line is right there in my head. And I'm like, that is fantastic as a songwriter to like stick in people's heads or like that moment, So.
That's the specific. Oh my gosh, I'm going to say this wrong.
Specificity.
The specifics of things, like getting that in is such a talent.
And I met him too a couple times, and he just gave me a big bear hug. And he's a Midwestern guy like me, and real humble. And so I kind of like to emulate that a little.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you're talking a lot about nature. It sounds like that is a big part of your life and a big part of your music. I read in your bio that you have a career closely tied to nature, and I'm super interested to learn what that is. Could you tell me a little bit about your day job?
Yeah, so I'm actually kind of in between jobs. I am a mother of 2 young girls, and I just was working for 6 years for the Whitefish Trail System, doing all their education programs, so kids and adults. And that's what I've done my whole life. As a park ranger with nonprofits, I train nature guides. So I studied in school interpretation, which is a form of communication to connect people to a resource, nature specifically for me. And then graduate studies too, environmental education. So my passion growing up, I loved being in the woods. And through like hard times as a child, nature was this place, like a sanctuary of like acceptance and also imagination. And I'd create and play. I was a child of the 80s, and we were free range out in the woods in Michigan and the lakeshore. And so I went to college thinking like, I want to do that for my life, and I want to get other people doing that in some ways and connecting. So I've been doing that forever. And then, yes, it's like I write poems. I've been studying poetry for 5 years, and everything for me, nature is this like vehicle. It's like so steeped in metaphor. So, you know, maybe I can't express completely like this sorrow, but I can use the moon waning to like, you know, I'm just saying an example. And that can be this vehicle. And that's what poems do. They take something, you know, this tangible thing, and like put this human emotion to it. And nature does that. And recently I studied to be a nature therapy guide. And that's my new sort of pursuit and that's less informative, like less teaching, but more getting people, it's like a process to get people into their senses and out of away from their phones and away from distraction and their senses in nature. And then like amazing therapeutic things can happen for people. And one of which is creative insight. And so nature for me has just always been a source of inspiration and creativity. Yeah. I mean, nature's so creative.
It is.
I mean, like, just...
Yeah, it's like...
the ultimate creator.
I mean, sometimes you look at stuff like this, and you're like, how is that not a painting that someone visualized? It? You know, it's just so beautiful.
I know. It's everything.
Yeah. So you're moving more into, like, nature therapy type of stuff. Is that, like, forest bathing?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I should have said that. That's the exact thing. A lot of people know as that, and you can call it a lot of things. I like to call it, like, sensory immersion or, you know...
Yeah, I did that once, and I was very inspired, and I was moved to kind of like...
Things come through. When you step out of your, like people will say, I love nature, and I hike all the time, and I bike, and I'm like, that's wonderful. There's so much beneficial to that. But are you talking to someone the whole time? Are you going from, like, your destination, your goal? You're like, when you do forest bathing or nature therapy, it's like, there is no agenda besides, like, you get an invitation to go do something that's sensory-based, out of your thoughts, and you end up doing something you would not have done, or interacting with another being that you wouldn't have, whether it's a tree or a mouse, you know, or a stone, I don't know, and then all of a sudden you have awe, or you have memories from childhood, or, you know, and you just engage, and it's so amazing.
Yeah, it really makes you pay attention.
Yes! Yeah. And Mary Oliver, one of my favorite poets, I would say poetry really influences my music, so that's why I talk about poetry, but Mary Oliver, what's her quote? Did I write it down? Oh, attention is the beginning of devotion. There's a quote from one of her poems, and it's like so true. When we are less distracted and can focus and like connect with our senses, it's really a way into the heart space and devoting to the moment, to being present in the moment. And I think music has that impact, you know? People stop thinking and they're all of a sudden immersed in their senses or their heart.
I love Mary Oliver.
I know. Who doesn't?
She's great.
I mean, she is kind of it's almost cliche because she's such a famous poet, but it's like, how can you not? I mean, she just blows me away daily.
Yeah, especially nature lovers, you know.
Yes.
It's easy. So you live in Whitefish now, but again, in your bio, I read that you traveled quite a bit. You're originally from Michigan. Can you tell me about that part of your life where you left home and started kind of venturing out?
Yeah. So growing up in Michigan, in Flint, Michigan specifically, which is notorious for various struggles, industrial boom town that kind of felt unraveled, water crisis, all the things that I get comments about. But being from somewhere like that does build character. It does make me aware and sensitive to those kind of struggles that do come through. I do have a song about my hometown called This Town. And but leaving, I went to college, and it was sort of like there wasn't much there besides family for me. And I really wanted to see a lot of the world. So I spent all of my 20s going moving 2 to 4 times a year, lived in various states, Guatemala, Mexico too, and just seasonal jobs or nonprofit government jobs. And then around 30, I was like, okay, I'm tired. And I was like, kept going back to Colorado. I was like, well, I guess I'll take that as a cue. If I keep going back there for different seasons, maybe that's the spot. So I was like, I'm going to commit to staying here. And then that's when I met my husband. And he and I were there for about 2 years, got engaged, and he works for the Forest Service and got a promotion up in Hungry Horse. And he went to school in Missoula, loved the area. So I was like, okay, like there's skiing, there's mountains. And one thing I missed so dearly was lakes and like so much water and swimming. Like I had Michigan that wasn't so much in Colorado. We lived at 10,000 feet, so a little cold. But we moved here. And one thing too that was kind of a surprise was like the community. And we fell in love. So it was 2010, I think, when we moved here. And then we got married on the Flathead River. We've had 2 children here. And I'll take them home to Michigan. And I'll say, okay, let's pack to get ready to go home. And they're like, home? Like, what is that? This is not their home, but I still, like the vernacular, you can't get it. And we go to the cottage up north, and it's just how it is. So I can't take that out of my roots. So that does come through in my music, too.
I'm going to switch back to music just a little bit, if that's okay.
Oh, yeah.
So how did you decide to pursue guitar?
Okay, so I grew up in a family of 4. I was the baby. And I'm a mom now, so it's made me more sympathetic to motherhood and that we are just doing the best we can. And so my mom raised us, and one thing she gave us was music. She made us play an instrument. So my oldest brother played saxophone, was an amazing jazz musician, and he was really into classic rock too and influenced me. They were teenagers when I was little in the 80s, so it was like my sister and brother that were older were like amazing to me. And my sister Sue played flute. Other sister played saxophone, and they all had to do marching band. And I was like, nope, like that is not, like, I mean, I admire marching band people because it just it's just not something I could do. And so I was like, I'll stick with piano. We have a piano. I'll stick with piano. I play at home. And I would I played for like 6 or 7 years, but I was, in retrospect, I kind of am bummed because I wasn't playing what I should have probably been playing. Pop music at the time, or jazz, or ragtime. It was mostly classical. It was what people told me to play and the teachers. And so I kind of didn't pursue it the way I wish I could have, but at the same time, it gave me that foundation. And when I left home, I was like, I want to write songs. I want to be musical. What can a guitar is so transportable. And so I got my first guitar when I was in college, and I took few years of lessons, and that was like therapy. I'd go see a guitar teacher for a couple of years, and he was wonderful. It just I don't know, we just played music, and so I fell in love.
Yeah. While you're traveling and moving different places throughout your 20s, it sounds like music was still really important to you. What did that look like back then? Were you still just were you writing songs when they came to you, or?
Yeah, so I still have some old songs that I wrote 20 plus years ago that I still perform once in a while, or like a couple that are really strong ones. And then I've evolved. But yeah, I would say I've always been writing songs. I had a really hard time putting lyrics or singing with piano. So it's interesting. Something in my brain can do guitar, but not piano. And so that was liberating to have a guitar and be able to put that together. So, as a young adult, when people are young adults, and I moved around so much, and I was so introduced by different people from all the people I met. And so that was really neat, because Greg Brown was introduced to me, not through my family. My sister and brother, and being in the 80s, MTV was everything. Oh my God. So I love 80s music because it was such a part of me, it was so influential. And a song can come on from the 80s, and I'm like, oh, I still get that little feeling I got when I was 8. But then being out of the house and being introduced to stuff that other people know, and that was really pivotal too. That's when I started really listening to more singer-songwriter type musicians. Yeah.
Yeah. What inspires you to write music right now, in this moment?
Music is a form of creative expression for me, and creative expression, I consider myself kind of an amateur artist in many things. And so I like to paint, and I like to draw, and I take photography, and I write poems and read poems, and write songs. And it kind of when you're creative, the more active you are in any of those things, the more it fuels each other. It's like a synergy. And so sometimes songs just come to me, and they just fly in like a bird, and I'm gotta get this down. And sometimes it's whoa, that just happened. And sometimes it's a laborious process. And the thing is devoting time and energy to creativity is tapping into the source for me, spiritually speaking. I think that the universe is a creative place, and it's also destructive. And I do feel like creativity is a form of activism. It's a form of saying whether or not you're productive with it, right? at some point in our lives, in our culture, I feel like a lot of us are we somehow get convinced that it's not worth our time to be creative because it's not lucrative, or we don't have time because we literally do have to work and pay the bills, or we're not good at it, so it's not worth it. But like, I work with children, and we make a mud pie contest or like a bake off with mud pies, and kids get so into it. They're so sensory, and they're so proud of their work. And it's like, what happens to us adults? Like, it's like we're so critical, or we think that if it doesn't sell or if people don't like it, take that aside and let's get back to the creative process, right? So for me, making music and writing poems and doing art is so fulfilling because it feels so good to be in that flow of the universe, that side of things, to counteract like the things that are bringing us a little bit down or stuck. And so I encourage people, and that's part of what I'm doing now at this point in my life, of being like, it's time to share my songs and stop like keeping them in my bedroom, because their songs are their own little life. And that's what was the turning point for me of believing in my songs and making it less about me, being like, do people like me? Do I sound good? It's like, this song is like killer and it needs to be heard by people. And I love it and I can get behind my song. So it takes a little bit out of the like self-consciousness or like, am I good enough to do this? Because I could compare myself to people all day of like, she's a better musician or he's more charismatic or whatever. It's like, no, but the cool thing is like when you ask me what makes me play this kind of music, it's like I'm just being true to like me and like what's coming through me and my sound. That's why I don't want to be put in boxes. I'm like, it's just me. And so when people say, what style do you play? I'm like, you just have to come listen. You just have to come see. I think you'll like it. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I just encourage people to find something, whether it's building or sewing or just like things that help you get present in the moment and create, and it feels good.
Yes,
right?
It's really good for you.
What do you do?
Well, I like to write.
Yeah,
and so
obviously,
as a reporter, but I also like creative writing.
Oh, yes.
And so I have a few little fiction stories I work on every now and again. Yes.
I just got goosebumps.
Oh, I love it. Well, and being up here, like I'm sure nature inspires you. It's a really, really great source of inspiration for me. Just, the backdrop of it all. That's kind of my bag, and I love to sing, but it's not like I go and do it anywhere.
Right,
I just like to sing in my car. But
yeah, or just singing in your car.
Yeah, and that feels great.
It's so good. Oh, good.
Yeah. So you said that you wanted to stop hiding your songs in your bedroom and things like that. Does that involve more live performances?
Yes, that's kind of the hope. I would say the one problem I have is like the self-promotion thing is hard for me to like walk into a place and be like, can I play here? And I struggle, and I don't know if it's like a generational thing or if it's a personal thing or as being a woman, but I do find that it's hard. I do find that part of it hard to like put myself out there. It's real vulnerable to share our art, first of all, but also try to like go in and then be told no, and then, or whatever, we're all full. And as a woman, I look at some of the venues sometimes, and it's like, oh, there's one woman in this whole lineup of men, and I think that there's a real opportunity to like uplift women. So thank you for having me and like supporting my work. Because I do think that personally for me, it's hard to take up space and to like ask for space. And so I do want to be bolder because like I said, my songs, they want to be heard. I feel like it's like, I don't know, like I was saying, you tap into the universal flow and you're like, okay, I have this gift and I need to share it. And so that's what I want to do more of. And like, I don't really have an expectation of like some people make jokes about being famous. I'm like, no, it's just like if I get paid to do something I love and that I have created and I'm doing it for myself and not some company or someone else, it's amazing. Yeah. It's like, boom, it's magic. So that's just a bonus getting paid. But the rest is like, I do want to share my talents and my gifts,
Yeah. Well, we're so excited to have you for our next Press Play that you'll definitely have. The audience at Press Play we're finding is really unique. And, we have like different kinds of musicians come in. A lot of them mostly play bar venues. Mm-hmm. And and of course it's inspired by Tiny Desk concerts. I don't think that's like a big secret. But you really have everyone's attention in a way that is pretty special. And, everybody's just excited to hear local music. A lot of times it's people who might not want to get out late at night and go to a venue to hear live music, so it's easier for them to come here in the day. So I don't know. I'm very excited. So,
Yeah, I'm excited too. I'm gonna cook up a really good, diverse, play a set list, and yeah, I think it'll be great. And I'm so honored and really touched to do it. So thank you.
Well, thank you for being here and telling me a little bit about your story and your music.